They said my mother was dying. Stage 3 cancer. No one else could help. Only me. The good daughter. The one with the apartment in Manhattan. I almost signed the papers. Almost. But one detail didn't add up. A hospital that didn't exist. A doctor no one had met. So I waited. I watched. And then I found the file, buried deep in my father's old laptop, named Dad Plan Final. That was the day I stopped being their daughter and started becoming something else. They thought they were playing me. They didn't know I'd learned the game and rewritten the rules. Growing up, I used to believe I was my mother's favourite. She didn't say it outright, of course. She didn't have to. It was in the way she packed little containers of homemade soup and overnight mailed them to my Manhattan apartment. The way she texted me reminders to wear a scarf. Baby, it's cold out. Even when I was 34. On my birthdays, she sent handwritten cards with quotes from Psalms, always ending with, "No one loves you like your mama." I clung to those gestures like they were sacred. I believed in them, in her. That's probably what made it so easy for her to betray me. The call came on a Sunday evening. I was folding laundry when her voice cracked through the phone. "Liv, I didn't want to tell you like this," she said, sniffling. "It's bad. Stage 3, the scans just came in. They're scheduling radiation already." I dropped the shirt I was folding. "Stage 3 what? What are you talking about?" "Cancer," she said, almost whispering. "Breast. It's moving fast. But don't tell your brother. He's under a lot of stress. You're the only one I can lean on right now." I remember sitting there on the floor, paralyzed, as my mind flooded with memories. Her humming in the kitchen, her fixing my prom dress, her hands warm against my fevered forehead as a child. My heart twisted. Of course I'd help. Of course I'd do anything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened my savings spreadsheet, stared at the mortgage calculator, ran numbers until my vision blurred. If I sold my apartment, even at market value, I'd have enough to cover treatment, support her during recovery, and maybe rent somewhere small for myself. It was tight, but manageable. The next morning, my brother Jake called. "Hey, I heard from Mum. I'm so sorry, Liv." He sounded shaken, but somehow rehearsed. "She didn't want anyone to know yet," I said cautiously. "Yeah, well, she told me anyway. I think it's her way of preparing us." There was a pause. Then he added, "Look, I know this sounds crazy, but I've got a contact who can get the apartment sold fast. Cash buyer, no hassle. If you want, I can help with the paperwork. You just keep your name on it. I'll handle the rest." I didn't say yes. I didn't say no either. Something tugged at me, a whisper in the back of my mind, but I pushed it down. This was family. This was love. You didn't question that. Over the next few days, texts poured in. My dad called to tell me he'd been researching experimental clinics in Arizona. My mum sent a picture of her hospital wristband. The date was conveniently blurry. A week later, I was scrolling Instagram during lunch when I saw it. A photo tagged at Leisure Springs Spa and Retreat. There she was, my mother wrapped in a white robe, a glass of champagne in hand, smiling like the world owed her nothing. The caption read, "Treat yourself." I stared at the screen for a long time, my salad wilted in its container. The noise of the cafe dulled to a hum. Maybe it was an old photo. Maybe she needed one last good day before chemo. I wanted to believe that. I almost did. That evening, I mentioned it casually to Nora, my best friend, since college, now a real estate lawyer. "Wait," she said. setting down her wineglass. Your mum's getting treatment at St. Kilda's, right? Yeah. Why? That's weird. I was just there filing a contract. I know the records guy. He said they haven't taken on any new oncology patients in weeks. Budget cuts. I'm sure it's nothing, but... She trailed off and I nodded slowly. But it's something. That was the moment the whisper in the back of my mind turned into a voice I'd buried for years. The one that said, "You know your family. You've always known." The golden cage had a crack, and sunlight was starting to pour in. The day after the spa photo, I did something I hadn't done since I was a teenager. I checked the family group chat. I'd muted it years ago, tired of the daily memes and passive-aggressive updates from my dad. But now I scrolled back, searching for context. I found it. 2 weeks before the cancer reveal, there was a text from my mom to Jake. "I think it's time. She'll cave if we hit her emotionally." Jake replied, "Just don't overdo it like last time." Last time? I tapped Jake's contact, opened our private chat history. Nothing seemed off. Until I searched for the word sick. A thread from 4 years ago popped up, one I had forgotten. He'd told me his then girlfriend was going through a health scare and he needed help with rent. I'd sent $3,000, but in the family group chat back then, he wrote, "Told Emily you were sick, she bought it. Classic trick." Mum responded with a laughing emoji. My stomach twisted, my hands went cold. I got up, paced the apartment. Something bigger was happening here, something more practiced than a moment of desperation. This wasn't panic, it was a strategy. I checked the security camera by my door. Mum had said she was too weak to come up during her last visit. But there she was in the footage, vibrant and laughing, wearing heels, chatting with a friend outside the lobby before walking away. She hadn't even buzzed. The video file had a timestamp from 3 days ago. Everything they told me was starting to unravel. I needed more. Proof. Not just intuition or suspicion, hard evidence. So I drove to my father's old apartment. He used to live alone after the separation before they reconciled for spiritual healing, as they called it. The place had been collecting dust for over a year. I still had the spare key. The building manager barely glanced at me when I walked in. I told him I was checking in on repairs. Inside, the apartment smelled like expired air and mildew. I opened drawers, scanned piles of old mail, flipped through a binder marked Jake portfolio. Useless. Then I saw it, a dusty Dell laptop under the coffee table. I plugged it in, waited. No password. The desktop was cluttered, mostly with spreadsheets and PDFs. But one file stood out immediately, sitting dead center. Dad Plan Final MP4. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. I clicked. The video was grainy. Dad sat at their kitchen table, hunched over a pile of papers. Mum's voice came from off camera. "So what's the breakdown?" He answered without hesitation. "Jake gets the apartment. Olivia will resist, but if we tell her it's for your treatment, she'll fold. She'll ask questions. She always does. But if she sees you weak enough, crying, she'll do it. She has a saviour complex." My throat tightened. They diagnosed my personality like it was a disease. I watched the rest of the video like I was watching someone else's family. At the end, he said something I'll never forget. If she thinks her mother's dying, she won't even check the papers. They knew me better than I knew myself, and they'd weaponized it. I drove home in silence. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. Instead, I sat in the dark and wrote down a list. Names, dates, screenshots, clips. I wasn't going to confront them. Not yet. I was going to learn their methods and beat them at their own game. The next morning, I called my mother. "Mom!" I let my voice break, just a little. "Liv, sweetie, are you okay?" "I've made a decision," I said, letting my breath hitch. "I'll sell the apartment. We'll use the money for your treatment. I just want you to be okay." She started sobbing, loud, theatrical, rehearsed. "Oh, baby, thank you. Thank you. This means everything." Jake called 5 minutes later. "You won't regret this, sis. I'll come by tonight with the paperwork. I know it's hard, but we'll get through it." I smiled into the phone. "Yeah, we will." But I had no intention of signing anything. They thought I was back in the cage. They had no idea the door had already swung wide open. I invited them for dinner. "Just one last night together before the apartment goes," I said, with a wistful tone that made my mother choke up on the phone. "Let's make it nice. I'll cook." They arrived dressed like it was Thanksgiving. My father wore his best blazer. Jake brought a bottle of wine, already opened, claiming he couldn't resist. My mother had her signature pot roast in hand, the one she used to make when I aced exams in high school. The table was set beautifully. Candles, cloth napkins, soft jazz playing in the background. I'd even made a lemon tart from scratch. The scent of garlic butter filled the room. Everything looked perfect. We toasted with glasses of red. I'd swapped mine out after they weren't looking, sipped water in a wine glass. For theirs, I'd added a measured dose of over-the-counter melatonin and antihistamines. Enough to make them drowsy, nothing dangerous, just effective. Mom smiled after her second glass, cheeks flushed. "You know, Liv, when you were little, you used to talk to your teddy bear like it was real. You were so tender, so full of empathy." Jake leaned forward, eyes glossy. "You always did more for this family than I ever could. I mean that. It would have been sweet if I didn't know better." I served the main course, cleared plates with a smile, brought out dessert. We laughed, we reminisced, they cried, I played along. By the end of the night they were yawning, blinking heavily, their words slower. Dad excused himself to the couch. Jake dozed off in the chair. Mom barely made it to the guest bed. Once I was sure they were all asleep, I went to my bedroom closet and pulled out the manila folder. Inside were the unsigned sale documents Jake had brought over that morning, printed and ready for final signatures. I took them to the kitchen. I lit a single match. The pages curled and blackened in the sink, flames licking at the lies printed on them. My apartment, filled with the smell of scorched paper and ink, I didn't flinch. I watched the entire thing burn. As the last ember died, I whispered, "You wanted a performance, here's mine." I didn't sleep that night. I packed a single bag, left a note, and vanished. 3 days. I turned off my phone, rented a room upstate under a fake name. I let the world wonder. I needed them to feel what I had: confusion, dread, helplessness. When I returned, the apartment was empty, just as I'd left it. But something had changed. The air felt cleared, like something rotten had been removed. On the kitchen table, I placed a small box marked for the family. Inside were 3 USB drives, each labelled, one for Dad, the hospital footage, one for Jake, the group chat archives, one for Mum. Her own voice on speakerphone saying, "She's always been easy to manipulate." And on top, a printed note, If Mum's dying, why is she booked for a cruise next month? I'd found the cruise confirmation email buried in her inbox. She never cleaned her spam folder, but I wasn't done. The next morning, I mailed copies of the same USB content to 3 very specific people. My mum's best friend, Nancy, the one who ran her Bible study group, the head of the church ladies committee who adored my father, and finally Jake's most recent ex-girlfriend whose breakup had nothing to do with money, according to him. Each envelope included a personal note. I thought you might want to know who they really are. By noon, my phone lit up with missed calls. I didn't answer. I made tea. I sat by the window. I waited. Sometimes you don't need to raise your voice to be heard. You just need to turn on the lights and let people see the shadows for themselves. When I came back, I didn't explain where I'd been. I walked into my apartment like nothing had happened. I greeted my doorman with a polite smile, unpacked my bag, made a cup of coffee. I even texted Nora, "Back, let's grab lunch soon." By evening, the phone started ringing. First, my mother. 8 missed calls, then a message. "Please, just talk to me, please." Then a voicemail, her voice trembling, broken in a way I hadn't heard before. "Liv, I don't know what we were thinking. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Your father is furious. Jake, he didn't know everything. I thought we needed to come together as a family." A year ago, I would have cried hearing that. This time, I turned the volume down. 2 days later, a letter arrived. Handwritten. From Aunt Margaret, my mother's cousin, someone I hadn't spoken to in nearly a decade. Her handwriting was shaky but elegant, the kind that suggested she still used stationery and sealed her envelopes with care. Inside was a single sentence. "You're not the first, call me." I did. She picked up after the first ring. "Olivia?" "Yes, I got your letter. I've been watching," she said, "your little exposé. I knew someone would finally stand up to them." I sat down. "What do you mean?" "They scammed me once," she said simply. "Years ago. After your grandfather died, they told me there was a clause in the will. Said he wanted me to donate my share of the inheritance for family debt. I believed them. I signed." My heart dropped. "They forged a clause?" "No, they lied about its existence. There was no clause. I found out a year later, too late to reverse it. But that's not all." She paused, then said slowly, "You know your grandfather promised you that land, right? The property upstate." "I remember," I whispered. "He used to take me there every summer." "Well, I have something you need to see." The next day, I met her at a cafe in Poughkeepsie. She brought a battered manila envelope, creased at the corners. Inside was a photocopy of my grandfather's original will, signed, notarized, dated 2 years before he passed. My name was there, clear as day, Olivia Ray Whitmore, sole inheritor of the Whitmore estate in Sullivan County. I stared at the page, blinking hard. "But I never got anything." "Of course not," she said. "Your parents pressured him to change it. When he resisted, well, that's when things got worse." She hesitated. "He had early stage dementia, but it was manageable with medication. They were supposed to handle it. Instead, they started hiding his pills. Said he was slipping faster than expected." I felt a chill spread across my skin. "They forced him into signing a new will. Jake's name replaced yours. Your grandfather didn't even remember doing it." I didn't speak. I couldn't. That night I sat on the floor of my apartment with the old will in my lap, the pages soft and worn. My grandfather's handwriting looked tired, but deliberate. He'd chosen me, he'd trusted me, and they'd taken it away. This wasn't just about the apartment anymore. This wasn't just about Mom faking cancer, or Jake's lies, or Dad's manipulation. This was about a legacy of control. A family business of deceit passed down like an heirloom. I opened my laptop, searched for a name I'd been holding in reserve, Thomas Greer, private investigator. Nora had used him once for a real estate fraud case. 20 minutes later, I sent him an encrypted email with everything: the old will, the family messages, the video of my father. I attached a note. I believe there may be grounds for reopening the Whitmore estate case. I want to know if a crime was committed and if it can still be undone. I hit send and sat back. They wanted me to believe I was powerless. They were about to learn how dangerous that mistake would be. I chose the day, carefully, his day. My grandfather had been gone 5 years to the day. For a man who'd never liked crowds, his memorial had been modest, quiet. A church lunch, a few polite words, and no mention of what he'd truly meant to me. That man had raised me with gentle hands and fierce expectations. He'd taught me how to tell the truth with silence and how to listen for the lies behind smiles. This time, his name would be remembered differently. I sent out invitations a week prior, just a simple message, honouring Grandpa's legacy, a gathering of remembrance, my apartment, Saturday at 4 p.m. Everyone came. My parents arrived with wine and tense smiles. Jake showed up late, in a suit 2 sizes too tight, like he'd been caught between a board meeting and a confession booth. My Aunt Margaret was already there, sipping tea by the window. Cousins filled the living room. Family friends hugged politely. Everyone whispered, wondering why this was happening here, in my space, so suddenly. At 4:10, I stood by the TV and cleared my throat. Thank you all for coming. I wanted to share something special, something Grandpa never got to say out loud. I picked up the remote and pressed play. The screen lit up with a mosaic of images. My grandfather's voice, recorded years ago, reading a letter he'd written but never sent. Aunt Margaret had found it with the original will. If you're hearing this, he said, voice crackling but steady, it means something went wrong. Gasps. My mother sat rigid, eyes fixed. My father shifted in his seat. My land, my legacy, was always meant for Olivia. Not because she's my favourite, but because she understands what it means to protect something. I fear she'll have to protect herself one day, from you. The video cut to my father at the kitchen table, the file I'd found on his laptop. His voice, calculated, unapologetic. Jake gets the apartment. Olivia will resist, but if we tell her it's for your treatment, she'll fold. If she thinks her mother's dying, she won't even check the papers. I let it play in full. No edits, no commentary. Then came the group chat screenshots, the cruise booking, the forged signatures, the voice memos. Finally, Margaret's voice, shaky but brave, recounting how she'd been tricked into giving up her share of the inheritance. When the screen went black, no one moved. Silence thickened the air. I stepped forward. This isn't about revenge, I said quietly. It's about truth and legacy and breaking the pattern before it ruins someone else. I reached into the folder on the table and pulled out a document. I'm removing myself from the Whitmore family register, I said, legally, permanently. Gasps again. My mother's lips parted, but no sound came. This is my name now. I held up the paper. Olivia Ray Castell. I've changed my surname. And in a few months, I'll no longer be a US citizen. My dual nationality allows it. Jake stood up, red-faced. You can't be serious. I am, I said, and this gathering, it's not a farewell, it's a funeral. For the version of me you thought you could manipulate. I nodded toward the door. You're welcome to finish the snacks on your way out. No one moved at first. Then Aunt Margaret stood. She walked over, kissed me on the cheek, and whispered, he'd be proud. The rest followed in waves, confused, ashamed, wordless. Jake cursed under his breath. My father didn't meet my eyes. My mother lingered, as if still waiting for a cue to act. But I'd already stopped playing my part. By sundown, they were gone. What followed wasn't dramatic. It was quieter, more corrosive. The phone call stopped. Neighbours began to whisper. Church friends stopped inviting my parents to dinners. Word spread, as it always does in tightly woven communities. Jake lost a major client. His face, his name, too connected now to a story that had gone local viral after someone from the memorial uploaded a snippet of the video to social media. Mum's best friend, Nancy, cut ties completely, and my father, pillar of the parish, ever righteous, was quietly removed from his role as council head. No scandal, just a replacement, but the twist came a week later. A letter arrived, handwritten, the envelope bearing only my name. Inside, in my mother's careful script, you are the only one in this family who ever had the courage to face what we are. You didn't destroy us. You freed yourself. For that, I cannot hate you. I only hope you find peace. You've already found truth. There was no return address. I stared at the letter for a long time, then folded it gently, tucked it into the same envelope as my grandfather's will, and sealed it. I didn't cry, I didn't smile, I just stood there, finally empty. And that emptiness, it felt like freedom. Granada was nothing like Manhattan. The air was gentler here, drier, quieter. The buildings breathed age and resilience, their ochre walls sun-washed and worn. I rented a modest apartment above a small cafe near the Alhambra, where flamenco dancers rehearsed in alleyways, and the scent of orange blossoms drifted in through my balcony each morning. It didn't take long before my hands began to itch for colour. I enrolled in a local arts collective, more women than men, more scars than smiles. We painted in silence sometimes. Other days we cried while we worked. One woman told me her brother had forged her signature to sell the home she'd built with her bare hands. Another had been institutionalized after refusing to hand over her savings to her mother. Each story cracked something open in me. I started painting women who stood in fire and didn't burn. I called the series Phoenix Portraits. My blog, once a space for random thoughts and weekend recipes, evolved into something else entirely. I wrote about emotional survival, about boundaries, about the illusion of duty. I never named names. I didn't need to. The stories resonated on their own. Within 6 months, I had over 500,000 subscribers. Comments poured in, stories of pain, resilience, escape. Each one reminded me that family, as a concept, was sacred, but like all sacred things, it could be twisted into something cruel, something weaponized. And then one comment changed everything. It came from an anonymous user, no profile photo, no name. Jake deserves worse, but you chose grace. I read it twice, 3 times. Then I closed my laptop and went for a walk. That night, I didn't sleep well. I kept hearing the voice from my grandfather's video. The way he said my name, the warning in it, the hope. The next day, I went back to the studio and finished the last painting in the Phoenix series. A woman kneeling in ashes, her back covered in wings, not white, not red, but a deep obsidian, not a saint, not a martyr, something else, a survivor. Weeks later, I launched a small workshop, just 10 seats. I called it Reclaim Yourself. We met in the back of a community library. No mirrors, no judgment, just women with notebooks, tea, and stories that had once made them feel small. I wasn't a therapist. I didn't pretend to be. But I knew how to build something from brokenness. I taught them what I had taught myself, how to spot manipulation, how to rebuild trust inward first, how to stop waiting for someone else's permission to feel whole. I opened every class the same way. Freedom isn't being unhurt. It's not needing their approval anymore. They wrote it down, every time. I rarely spoke about my family now. Not because I was hiding, but because they no longer had a seat at the table of my life. My peace no longer hinged on their chaos. We painted, we wrote, we cried, we laughed. And then, on the last day of the third workshop, as I was gathering brushes and cleaning teacups, a young woman approached me. She looked nervous, mid-20s, long sleeves despite the heat. Her voice was soft. "Are you Olivia?" I nodded. "Yes." She bit her lip. "I didn't sign up through the site. I came because my aunt told me to. Margaret." I froze, the name hitting me like a distant thunderclap. "She said you helped her once," the girl continued. "She told me if I ever needed someone who gets it, someone who's lived it, to find you." "What's your name?" I asked. "Eleanor," she said. "She's my mum's sister." "But they don't talk. I think she protected me from something. But no one ever tells me the whole story." I handed her a notebook. "Then let's start with yours." She smiled, just a little, and that was enough.